So today I'm going to explain a little bit about how the early 1990s destabilized the Middle East. Well, setting forth a chain of events that destabilized the Middle East as it is today. If you look back at early 1900s, 1990s, 93, George W. Bush, H.W. Bush was president, decided, the Gulf War. Everybody knows about the Gulf War, a little bit of background on it. Everybody likes to think, war's for the best. It's for the people in those countries, and that's simply not the truth. There's other things that drive our country and other countries to go to war, and mostly it's money. Money drives war. War makes money for the United States. Believe it or not, anytime we're at war, we're making massive amount of money, whether it be our defense contractors or just our national budget. It's honestly better. There could be a lot of arguments for that, but I believe war's a good thing and beneficial for the United States in some aspects. So, a little bit of history. In like 1992, 1993, Iraq was disappointed, I would say, with Kuwait, because Kuwait was kind of not adhering to the OPEC standards of oil production, and they were producing so much oil that it was driving down the cost of oil to about $10 a barrel, which was the main driving force between Iraq's economy. At $10 a barrel, how are they supposed to make good amount of profit? And they tried to discuss it civilly. That wasn't working. So, like any other country, they kind of invaded Kuwait to stop that. That way, oil production would cease and go back to its normal. The United States didn't like that, and a bunch of other countries did not like that. So we started with airstrikes and eventually invaded Kuwait. And took less than 100 hours of ground combat, I guess you could say, to further full retreat. And what that did was setting forth a chain reaction of events that we're seeing currently today. Iraq, obviously, not happy with that because their main import, or export rather, is oil. So they lost that battle. So what they started doing was, well, next time this happens, we're going to make sure we build up our military arsenal, and that way next time we can actually fight for our country and our economy, so to speak, just like any other country would do. And I'm not defending Iraq, I'm just saying we would have done the same thing in the same situation. That ultimately, after 9/11, the Gulf War and everything, we weren't even intervened in the Middle East. But the 90s, we got intervened into there, and once you step foot in there, it's hard to get out because you start destabilizing things. So they grew their weapons, and then after 9/11, we were like, oh, they've got weapons of mass destruction, so to speak. So we ultimately, as we all recall, in about 2003, invaded Iraq and took down Saddam Hussein, the dictator. A lot of people could argue that was a good move. I can tell you, in my opinion, that was the worst move that could have been made. Iraq may have not been the best country, but they definitely kept the Middle East stabilized. We didn't have ISIS. We didn't have all these problems that we have now because there was a dictatorship regime in the Middle East controlling all these little Al-Qaeda members, ISIS members. They weren't letting them fathom and get bigger, because if they got bigger, they were a threat to Saddam Hussein and the Iraq government. So with him in place, I believe that the Middle East would still maybe it wouldn't be a good place for the people there, but it would be a lot better than it is right now. So the Gulf War was probably one of the worst decisions in the history of our nation to even try to step foot or poke our nose in the business that we shouldn't poke our nose in. But like I said, war's money, and it's all about oil, and we went over there because if Iraq would have got control of the oil market, then we would have lost a lot of income as well with our allies Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Their countries are just as bad as Iraq, but we don't like to say that because we're partners with them and we get a lot of money for them and their oil production. Iraq wasn't partners with us, so we weren't seeing any income revenue for them and their oil production, so we decided to take them out, which ultimately, the early 1900s and the Gulf War just destabilized the Middle East into what we have now. I mean, you can see, watch the news. It's not going to get any better until we just step out and let another regime take place and hopefully control the Middle East. So, just a little background about the Gulf War and how it's not really talked about, but that was a huge, huge step that could have been handled differently. And we probably wouldn't have ISIS right now or any of the other horrible things in the Middle East if we had just stayed out of the ISIS or Gulf War, rather.